UFC 308's in the books, guys. UFC 308's in the books, guys. What a night. What an afternoon, really. I'm going to start off by saying Abu Dhabi cards, bring them to me. Give me overseas cards. To start watching fights at 10 in the morning with some breakfast and coffee. Noon hits, you start hitting some beers. And by 5 o'clock, you're a few drinks in and it's over. Watching Ilia Topuria make history, I'm all about it. I'm all about it. And I don't know where you're from because I have followers from all over the globe. But in the East Coast of the United States, I freaking love it. I freaking love it. Anyway, guys, this is my UFC 308 recap video. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. If you're a constant viewer, be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I am going to run through the prelims, break down what I think of the fights and what happened and why it happened. Then I'm going to go a little into the nitty gritty of the actual fights and breaking them down when we get to the main card. Long story short, if you don't want to hear the prelims, you're a casual watcher. Hey, I cater to you. I'm the MMA casual. But I'm going to move forward. I've been watching football all day. It's Sunday night right now when I'm making this video. I'm exhausted. I'm dehydrated. I went to the Dolphins game, actually. Let me put up a nice picture of the Dolphins game. Ta-da. Long story short, let's talk business. Guys, Renaf versus Carlos Leao, whatever you want to say. Guys, long story short, it's simple. Renaf, to me, is not a fraud, but you're borderline fraud. You're 23-1-1, and you just got a hand-fed win. I mean, this is ridiculous. Carlos won that fight. Some cards should have said 30-27. I think it was like 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. I mean, maybe in one judge's scorecard we're not won. But unfortunately, we went to Abu Dhabi. And I'm not saying unfortunately in a bad way, but it is corrupt. I mean, at the end of the day, the judges had to have something in their pocket for this. There's no reason why Renat should have taken that fight. He did not have center control, did not have ground game. He did not have the striking advantage. Carlos Leao landed the better strikes, the more powerful strikes. I mean, there's no scorecard that's accurate or anybody who really judges fights who gives it to Renaf Fakhretdinov. So I'm very confused. I have to lean towards everything there is corruption and them giving it to Renaf in Abu Dhabi. There's not a single person I know who says Carlos lost that fight. And that's just a reality, and I hate to say it because one thing that bothers me about this sport is I do gamble on it. I do give picks, so when picks are off, I mean, in this sense, I actually benefited from it, which I usually don't, but it's upsetting because that's someone's career. Carlos Leao should be on the right track after coming in to the UFC on his debut and beating Carlos Leao. Sorry about the water. I'm going to do it on camera. I'm not editing this. Pinky up and everything. It is what it is. Ismail Nardev versus Bruno Silva. Long story short, Bruno Silva's checked out. This guy should not have been in Abu Dhabi fighting. This guy shouldn't be on an early prelim. Quite factually, he shouldn't be in the UFC. Bruno Silva's just checked out. This guy has no reason to be anywhere. I mean, you're giving us this performance in Abu Dhabi, which is a special card in my opinion. You're giving it to us. Getting older as a vet. I mean, what are we doing? What's the purpose? I mean, just he looked bored out there. He didn't have a sense of urgency. I mean, this guy has to get cut after a fight like that. Maybe you give him one more. If he gives it to you again, there's no way he's fighting in the UFC. Straight up. Ismail Nardev, great performance. I thought he was all around special. Showed some grappling, showed effective striking, great control, octagon control, pushing a pace. I mean, killer. Victor Hugo, Farid Basharat, decision win for Farid. I think this is whack. I did have a $25 bet to make like $750. Make $725. It was a $750 payout for Victor to win by submission, and he actually had a nice leg lock in the first round. But at the end of the day, Farid Basharat, you're fighting a guy, Victor Hugo, who couldn't make weight, and respect to him because they fought at, I believe, featherweight, which is 145. For those of you who don't know, you all should know by now. They were supposed to fight at bantamweight, I believe. So Farid comes in at 135, ends up weighing in at like 137 because prior to that, Victor Hugo's team comes to the UFC and says he's not going to make weight. So he comes in at like 145. You shouldn't have to fight a guy 10 pounds over. At a professional level, shouldn't happen. You're like trying to make a name at amateur. Sure. Victor Hugo's a scrub. You're going to kill him. You come in, whatever. But UFC fighters, the highest level of mixed martial arts, and you're coming in 10 pounds over, a professional sport. I just still do not get that, guys. And oh, you don't know what it's like to cut weight. I'll get some like fools like, oh man, you're not a fighter. You don't get it. I mean, if you can't cut weight, don't fight. You have to pull out. It's that simple. There's weight classes for a reason. You're a professional for a reason. This is literally your job. And if you're juggling, I mean, it's your responsibility. I mean, there's no excuse. And for somebody who has 30 fights in the professional level of mixed martial arts, he's 25-5. Ridiculous. I don't know. I'm super annoyed about Victor Hugo. Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. Guys, Chris Barnett, a fan favorite. I love him. I really do. Kennedy Nzechukwu with a lot to prove here. I mean, I had him. I didn't have his money line because it was like minus 700, but for good reason. I mean, Chris Barnett, like 5'9". Kennedy Nzechukwu, like 6'5". Chris Barnett came in, and he was like jumping around the octagon. He hurt himself. And he's so athletic. He's good. He's like, if this guy would fight at like 155, he'd be a nuisance. He'd be a problem. He'd be athletic. He'd be kicking and doing all this. And I guess we love Chris Barnett because he's entertaining and he's this like chubby dude. But it's like, you're not 5'9", 260 pounds in the UFC and you're successful. I mean, let's be honest. Come from behind wins. It's going to happen. You did it. I mean, he's definitely like his own thing. And I respect it. And a lot of people like him. But yeah, if you're 5'9", 260, jumping around and being an athlete, you're going to get injured. You're like, his frame shouldn't handle 260 pounds jumping up into the air and throwing these crazy hyperextended kicks. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And then Kennedy Nzechukwu gets a free TKO on Chris Barnett for no reason. But you know what? It is what it is. Abus Magomedov, Bruno Ferreira. That was a close-ass fight. It was 1-1 going into round number 3. If you ask me, Bruno Ferreira had a great second round. In the first round, Abus Magomedov pushed the pace. Second round, Bruno Ferreira pushed the pace. And Abus just looked dead. Back to that Sean Strickland fight. Just like, I come out, I look good, and then he just shuts off. Everything that hits him affects him. He comes out, his hands are low. It was crazy. Like, he has no gas tank. And luckily, in the third round, he was able to pull through, get a submission with less than 2 minutes left. And Abus Magomedov proves he's still the real deal, but very concerned regarding his cardio. Anybody who could last all 3 rounds, and let's say Bruno was able to stay away from that submission, get up, and fight for the next 2 minutes. I mean, that was a completely close fight. Like, that could have gone either way. And Abus Magomedov has a lot to work on as far as cardio. He did look better. He was shredded. He had, and they mentioned it in the analyst booth, he had muscles that had never been showing, no diddy. But he looked good. He really did. But I don't know, his cardio, man. Maybe when he gets hit, it's just not there. Now we get to the nitty-gritty. This shit woke me up. Forget about my coffee in the morning. Mateus Rebeski is actually how you say it, apparently. And, of course, Orobi, the caveman who has been frozen for centuries at the night at the museum. And they let him out. Listen. Absolute banger fight. If you did not watch Rebeski and Orobi, stop this video. I'm okay with the average watch time. Go watch that. The third round alone, I've watched like 3 times, and it happened yesterday. What a fun fight. I mean, Orobi got his vision taken away from him immediately in the first round because of, it looked like he got a thumb in his eye. It was just a soft tissue golf ball under his eye, which lifts, which you've seen before if you've been watching fighting. And ultimately, he had like his eye super thin. It was just all the skin puffed up, just so much swelling. And ultimately, what's impressive about this, I had it 1-1 going into round number 3, and Rebeski knocks down Orobi like a minute and a half into round number 3. He's cut up. Rebeski's cut up. Orobi's done. Finished. Like, turns over. Rebeski gets behind him. He's landing shots while Orobi's on all 4. I thought it was over. I mean, no question about it. And Orobi finds a way up. Rebeski takes him down. Starts hitting him with crazy shots. Orobi gets up. All blood everywhere. Just on both of these guys. Rebeski just landing everything. Emptying out the tank. Next thing you know, Orobi ends up on top of Rebeski. Ground and pound. They get up. He's the one with energy. Rebeski can't put his hands up. Orobi takes him down. Oh my God, ground and pound again. And it's like this crazy round of just hearts and you unleashing the whatever beast you have inside you. I mean, these guys went at it. It was so impressive. One of my favorite fights of the year. Bloodiest, goriest fights It was really good. And if you haven't seen Rebeski versus Orobi, please watch that fight. More specifically, watch the third round. Ultimately, Rebeski won. I did not have him winning the fight. That's the first one I got wrong. But I think the right guy won. I think it was fair, and it is what it is. Next up, Jeff Neal, Rafael Dos Anjos. Quick breakdown. Rafael Dos Anjos, older gentleman. Both of them veterans. Simple. Jeff Neal and Rafael Dos Anjos exchange some blows. Rafael Dos Anjos throws out his knee. Jeff Neal gets on top of him. They stand up. Rafael Dos Anjos tries to get back with it. Knees blown out. Jeff Neal throws like a 1-2. Rafael Dos Anjos is like, hey, I'm done. When he gets on the ground on his back, he's like, no. Ref stops it. Jeff Neal gets a first round TKO victory. Didn't do much. And we move forward. I mean, there's not much to say about that. It was straightforward and not a real fight, if you ask me. Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Sakara. I had Ibo Aslan, which ended up being, it was a pick'em, but I picked him up as an underdog. Rafael Sakara, I mean, UFC debut. Ibo Aslan comes in, killing people. Short hooks, just kind of explosive. Doesn't take care of himself. A lot of people thought Rafael was going to get the best of him. He didn't get the chance. Ibo Aslan came in and started throwing hooks, got Sakara to the cage, and it was over. I mean, he might have got hit with like one clean hook, and it was just like the lights came off. He did not want to leave his guard. I mean, he was up against the fence like this, just taking hook, uppercut, hook. And it's incredible. It lasted for like 20 shots. And then ultimately the ref was like, this guy's not even defending himself. And a few would like slide through, and they were just like, yo, this is the end of the fight. And it was like 51 seconds into the first round. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was so fast. And I agree with the stoppage. I mean, Rafael Sakara did nothing but fun up to now. And I got to be honest with you. Going into the main card, I was like, hey, it's been good. The prelims were good. Everything was good. But there was still so much potential. And I think it delivered. First fight of the main card, Sherved Magedov, Armen Petrosyan. If you did not watch my breakdown, I picked Armen Petrosyan. It's that simple. I thought Sherved was going to have issues with an orthodox fighter pushing the pace and just someone who's as good as a kickboxer. He hasn't dealt with a striker like Armen Petrosyan. And Armen is an experienced guy compared to Sherved. I mean, I guess to the same degree. They're about at the same level. But I feel like Armen Petrosyan's been more UFC tested. And I'm not saying Sherved's gotten lucky, but I don't know that. I mean, obviously he's gotten this like path to where the UFC wants him to go. Long story short, I did have Armen winning this fight. Do I regret it? Obviously. We saw 2 rounds of beautiful kickboxing. Armen Petrosyan almost got a finish in the first round. He was eating at Sherved's legs, and I really thought the mobility at one point was going to get Shara. Like, the leg kicks were going to stop his mobility. He would not stop bouncing around. He's a very mobile fighter, just always bouncing around, always moving. And Armen Petrosyan almost threw 50 leg kicks, and nothing was done to his mobility. It was absolutely nuts. Ultimately, Sherved throws the nastiest back fist ever. But the problem with this back fist is that it wasn't a single back fist. He threw a double back fist. He threw the back fist, landed, and then came back around. And what I was explaining to my brother was, what's impressive to me is, the precision of the back fist is something. But for you to generate all the power Sherved did off a double back fist is nuts. Because if you're in the normal orthodox stance and you come around with your backhand, you generate so much force as you're coming around because your body's swinging into the back fist from your backhand. And I know if you're a striker, you understand that. But once you're there, to just the force and torque you generate with to bring your front hand back is not the same. So for him to put Armen Petrosyan out with the double back fist, to me, is impressive because the move is, not a common thing that's thrown or that actually lands. The precision is impressive. But for you to have the power to knock somebody out with the double back fist, that second hand, is crazy to me. And, I mean, like I said, I regretted picking Armen Petrosyan. Sherved shut me up. And, I'm not going to call him a fraud, obviously, even though he had a rough first round. He's a real deal. He's a pirate. He's scary, and he's a real scary guy in his division. And just like Khamzat Chimaev, which we'll talk about, I think he's a real deal. I think he's someone everybody in the middleweight division should fear. It's that simple. Leron Murphy, Danny Gay. I picked Leron Murphy. I'm happy about it. More technical guy, cleaner striking. I said all of this. Danny Gay is the real deal. I was super scared of this fight, and I thought it was super close. Again, 1-1 going into round number 3. Ige takes 1, Murphy takes 2, and the third round was very close. Danny Gay had a lot of control time on the ground, but ultimately, Leron Murphy, when he got up, he was the one who was not gassed. Danny Gay came out too explosive in the first round, and the second round, he tried to finish Leron Murphy, and he just tanked. He gassed. And those two things in the third round, I think, kept him way too tired. So when there needed to be critical striking, he just couldn't do it. And Leron Murphy just landed the better shots, had a little more explosiveness, wins 29-28 across the board. I'm sorry, guys. Magomed Ankalaev, Alexander Ratchik, straightforward light heavyweight. Magomed Ankalaev needs to fight Alex Pereira. There's no ifs, ands, or buts here. Great striking. Did not go for a takedown. Promised everything he did to Dana White. Dana White on the post-fight press conference said he did enough. So we are going to see Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev. There's no doubt about that. Alexander Ratchik, very good. Magomed said he's a very uncomfortable guy to fight. I believe that. We saw that with Hiri. We've seen that before. The guy's a gladiator. He's huge. I think there's a lot to come from him. I don't X this guy out for losing a Hiri and losing a Magomed. You're losing to the top of the division. There's a lot to do for him. Maybe a rematch with Hiri wouldn't suck, but or maybe fighting Johnny Walker, whatever. I mean, but Magomed Ankalaev, Alex Pereira, that's the next fight. Co-main event, middleweight, Robert Whitaker, Khamzat Chimaev. Coming into this fight, it was simple. We all know Khamzat. Again, he's never fought a real middleweight. This is my perception of the situation. Fought Kamaru Usman, fought Gilbert Burns, had problems with both of them. What makes me think he'll run through Robert Whitaker? Absolutely nothing. I thought, and my quote was, if Robert Whitaker makes it through the first round, survives the first round is what I said, because you have to survive Khamzat's wave, especially initially with that explosiveness and strength. If you survive the first round, if Robert survives the first round, Khamzat begins to fade, the takedown stopped working, and now we're in Robert's world. I thought we were going to get there, and I said I had Robert winning. Wow. Am I impressed? I was going to say, if we were talking in this video, if Khamzat Chimaev lost to Robert Whitaker, he is the biggest what if in UFC and MMA history. If Khamzat Chimaev is fighting once a year for 4 years in his prime and then comes up to lose to Robert Whitaker when he makes it to middleweight finally, when he doesn't pull out of a fight, he's the biggest what if. He would have gone another year without fighting. Who knows who he fights next? Maybe he retires. When you're at his age and you're as good as he is, fighting one time a year, it doesn't cut it. For Dana, for the fans, for you, it doesn't benefit you when you're fighting the elite. But this man came in, took down Robert Whitaker within 30 seconds, held him down there for 3 minutes, and Khamzat Chimaev, an 185-pound man, broke Robert Whitaker's jaw with his forearm. There was no choke. It was brute strength up against the cage while Khamzat Chimaev's on Robert Whitaker's back, one of the best middleweights to ever do it. He went to go for a choke. He didn't have his neck. The forearm was on the chin. And in less than a second, Robert Whitaker's hand was going up the top. What in the world? This guy has solidified all the fear that was ever mentioned of him. I'm scared of this guy now. Not for me, for other fighters. I believe in all the hype now for Khamzat Chimaev. There was a point in me that I was like, he's going to be another like Sage Northcutt, obviously on a different level. You know what I mean? Like another fighter Dana's trying to bring up that it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. Inactivity, life, issues, illness, whatever. It just doesn't work out. And this guy came in, and Robert Whitaker, one of the best middleweights to ever do it, and I'll say that confidently, Khamzat Chimaev made him look like an amateur. Khamzat Chimaev, a grown man at 185 pounds, broke another man's jaw in the first round, just going for a choke. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't an elbow. His face wasn't jumping off the canvas. he went and squeezed his head and he broke Robert Whitaker's jaw. And I wish I could show that picture. I want to show you that picture, but I'm pretty sure YouTube would shit the algorithm with that. So I won't. But Hamza Chimaev is a force to be reckoned with. Screw Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has not earned another title shot. He was the champion, lost it, beat Paulo Costa. Give it to the new guy coming up. The UFC owes Sean Strickland nothing for DDP. Nothing. And Hamza Chimaev deserves to fight DDP. For me, it's that simple. Let me know what you think below about that. And let's kill this with Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway. Max Holloway is loved by everyone in the mixed martial arts community. Max Holloway has only gotten better in the last few years. Max Holloway has not lost to anyone but Alexander Volkanovski in the last few years. He is the real deal. He just put out Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 for the BMF belt. He is a BMF. He is the BMF right now. And he goes up against 145-pound champion, new champion, Ilia Topuria. What could go wrong? This fight went exactly how I thought it would. And I said that in this video, in the last video I made. I said it's volume versus power. A lot of people said this. I mean, I'm not some sort of guru. I give things how I believe they're going to happen. And if they're accurate, they're accurate. I happen to be accurate. Max Holloway has the volume advantage. The one thing that impressed me was Max Holloway also had the size advantage. He looked very big in there. At one point, Topuria really looked like he had trouble closing the distance. Excuse me. What I could respect from Ilia Topuria is that he is so confident in his ability. Ilia Topuria stood in the center of the octagon in the first 2 seconds and pointed down and said, "Come throw down with me." Props to Max Holloway. He didn't feed into Ilia's game. But for Ilia Topuria to feel comfortable with his own ability to go down with Max Holloway after what Max Holloway has done recently, putting out Justin Gaethje, the Korean Zombie, Arnold Allen. I mean, you're just knocking down everybody and knocking out everybody. And for you, with Max's momentum, to call him in the middle of the octagon, play his game, really, even though you're calling him in, you're playing his game. He's the bigger guy. Impressive. Because Ilia Topuria is comfortable with his strength and ability and his power. That's what he's comfortable with. The undefeated guy from Spain. Now, Max Holloway. Beautiful fight. I wish he would check some leg kicks. Because ultimately, I think that had a lot to do with the outcome of this fight. But Max Holloway, volume was there. Landing strikes. He looked good. He looked powerful. He caught Ilia a few times. I think Ilia felt Max's power. Obviously, not putting anybody out, but a couple 1-2s. His jab was there. That's what Max needed to do. Ilia did go for a takedown or two. Max was able to get up. I thought that was going to be something that was possible. But I think Ilia had an idea in this fight. And I think he really wanted to put Max Holloway out. And the reason I give Ilia so much credit is because nobody's ever been able to do it. And when we talk about Max Holloway, someone who I mentioned is only getting better, it's even more impressive. Max Holloway's never been, he's been at the top of the UFC, but he's never had this type of attention. He's never had this much glamour and this much popularity because he was never doing things to fighters like he's doing now. He never had a UFC 300 moment. He never did anything like that. And to see him fight for the featherweight belt again and against someone, the newcomer Ilia Topuria, was impressive. Ultimately, I know I'm yapping a little bit, but ultimately, Ilia Topuria's power came through. Ilia did exactly what he needed to do. When he closed the distance, he was effective. He was fast. His leg kicks were remarkable. I do think he messed with Max's mobility. He stopped him in the first 2 rounds, and then round 3 comes, and Ilia Topuria just throws a straight that wobbles Max Holloway. And it's funny because when he closed the distance, I remember yelling. I was like, my wife was next to me, and I was like, don't get careless, because he was just mixing it up real well, just throwing. He was going up, body, and I was like, shit, Max throwing some crazy hook right now could kill Ilia Topuria, because that's something that would happen. And Max just had nothing, and then he backs up, circles out of the cage, and Ilia's just hunting him down like a cobra looking for food, or hunting his own prey. Not looking for food, but hunting his own prey, ready to just strike. And ultimately, Ilya's left hook just finds Max Holloway, and we find him laying with his back on the floor. He's just looking up, and he was just out already. And Ilya gets into like this somewhat ground and pound from side control, and he just hammer fists him. And I mean, Bart Goddard stopped that fight immediately, and Max Holloway, for the first time in his career, got knocked out. And now we say, what's next for Ilya? Volkanovski. I think that's fair. Volk did a lot for the UFC. Dana said it. He says he's always been our guy. He took Islam for the second fight on short notice. He's defended the belt like 6-7 times. He gets it. And one thing I do love about Ilia Topuria is how humble he was after the fight. He said that Max is someone he's always looked up to, that he's so happy he was able to fight him. There was no shit talking, no like, oh, I'm the best ever, oh, this, that, the other. No, he was very respectful. And then he goes on to say, Alex absolutely deserves it. And maybe it's because he wants what he thinks is an easy fight. He already beat him. Maybe he wants that again versus something else. But he says, I owe it to him. Alex is one of the best to ever do it. I look up to him as well. He's a legend. He deserves it. And I couldn't agree more. So Ilya's becoming this likable champion, and I think he's taken out two legends, and you have to respect them. And the fact that he's going to fight Volk again, I absolutely love. I'm absolutely scared about it because I love Volk, but I'm a huge fan of Ilia Topuria. I think this kid's a real deal. And to knock out Max Holloway is just, he deserves a medal and he deserves a medal in itself for beating Max Holloway. And then Max, what's next for Max? Time off. Never been knocked out. He's taken damage, but never been knocked out before. I think he needs to relax. But there was talks of him going up to lightweight again, and he mentioned, or the Diamond mentioned Max Holloway, and I think that'd be a fucking crazy fight. I would love that. But that's all I gotta say about this, guys. I know I'm yapping, and I have so much more to yap, but I wanted to keep it short. Let me know what you think. Be sure to follow. I'm the MMA Casual. Always a pleasure.